Hey everyone, attending our webinar series. This is one of our last ones coming up, because we have the application deadline in the state of Illinois. That's on March 16th, which is basically 2 weeks from Monday. And so we wanted to bring in, another, excellent webinar series for you to answer all your questions regarding the three different types of licenses available in the state of Illinois, which are craft grower, infuser, and transporter. Today we have some really special guests. They're an excellent team and really amazing in terms of what they're doing for the industry. Their name is TC Creative Solutions. Essentially bringing everybody from the brand perspective and building proof of concept that all the way into operations and all the way and beyond. So, very fantastic group, with us today. I want to kind of introduce that. One of them's name is Jamal Hackler. He's a head cannabis practitioner. So he was a co-founder of Ag Genetics, and has been for about over 30 years. Excellent, top ranked cultivator in the United States. Currently owns a club called Cannabis Club LA, serving a cannabis community of over 50,000 followers for his resource network. His network includes people like Mr. Nice, Cookies Family, Stravinsky's, and a lot of top brands in the industry. And also operates a large community for distribution all over the United States with a dispensary network of 500 stores through their partnered media contacts. So welcome, Jamal. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. And yourself, Sam?
Good. So, and then also your partner, Corey Higgs, Chief Disruptor, brand and marketing strategist, obviously boosts influence, creates magic for CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs, has over 20 years of marketing experience in that space with multi-million-dollar brands such as Red Bull, Hennessy, Heineken, Sony, you name it. So this is an excellent, what I'd say synergistic team to help you understand how to start your cannabis business successfully, especially in a new state like, or a recurring state like Illinois for adult use. And I would love to introduce these guys. So how you doing, Corey? How you doing?
Hey, Zayd, I'm doing great. Yourself, man?
Fantastic, man. It's a nice time in the industry right now. It's pretty wild, on both sides, but there's a lot of activity happening all over, and there's massive amounts of opportunity. And one of those bigger opportunities is the state of Illinois. It's a $3.2 billion marketplace. There's a lot of folks trying to get in there. The social equity program is incredible. It's probably one of the best in the United States that I've seen. So, really, I would like to go down, some questions with you guys and kind of see what you guys think about, that state, or as well as how your experience in other states can help our audience here today. So I'd like to start kind of with a question for Jamal. Jamal, tell us a little bit about your background and some of the things with cannabis cultivation and breeding that you've done. It sounds pretty spectacular.
Zeta, thank you for asking. I've been breeding cannabis for over 35 years. My family originates back in South America, the lower South and Latin region. Through research and through a lot of different types of cannabis growing, it resulted in a family name being endowed to us, the Hacklers. And so that's like a couple hundred years of history of just growing cannabis. And we had to really dig in deep and learn about the microbiology of soil and being able to cultivate in a sustainable fashion, even back then, because supplies weren't as readily available as they are today. So working with, different companies has been like a dream for me, because I've worked with people who've had a lot. In return, some companies had little, but we would create a sustainability project that was vertically integrated. So, over the years, I started working with different clubs, different collectives, and working with a lot of people who just needed a really strong SOP to be able to get a return on their product, get a return on their investment. And so, me and Corey hooked up and started, meshing the older ways with some of the newer ways. And then Corey and I started just really coming together and, creating some content for people. Some substance, some stuff that they can tangibly say, hey, now I'm in the industry.
Right. Successfully, though. Because you get a lot of folks out there that, everybody has this craze, right? And they all think oh, I want this license, or this license, or any license for that matter. But really, some approaches, it's maybe it's just an ancillary-based service that comes in and really supports that and is able to gather data to help other folks like cultivators and breeders and stuff like that. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. The data that comes from it, when they use different sensory systems, different types of, solicitation systems to where they're doing tracking, asset management, it kind of prompts them to be in a certain work mode, certain workforce, an area, and it helps project manage them piece by piece by piece instead of them going at it on their own. And there's a fear there, for people
Right.
going on their own, you
Mhm.
know.
So, I mean, in respect to Illinois, though, I mean, like, there's a specific, operation and management practices plan. I mean, obviously, every single state, in my 25-year career, going and, helping people win licenses and going through this process too, as well, like you guys, there's always these best practices, right? And so, could you give us a quick summary of like some of these processes and maybe how seeds and clones might impact your operation, or, just some insight there? That'd be great.
Well, Corey's got a major part of go in the operation because some of this has a lot to do with software, a lot of it has to do with marketing. But when you start talking about seeds and genetics and being able to make sure they're in a process, the seeds themselves is the most important part of the plant. It's the most important part of the operation. It's the simple things that really matter in life. And when it comes to cannabis, it's the same way because you can go out and go buy a seed and just achieve a grow and it's average.
Hmm.
But then after you start culturing the seed and start recrossing the plant and start having an intimate value of that plant and start learning it, it becomes more profound as you start to become more engulfed in the plant,
Right.
And so it's almost like,
It's a lovely thing. I mean, so,
yeah,
it's so I'm passionate about it too because I started out as a cultivator, and I
yeah.
mean, there's very large gardens here in Oakland, and so I totally get that. I mean, I actually want to ask you your question from your experiences. You obviously specialize in this area considerably. What is your favorite strain to grow or breed?
Oh wow. Well, I like the Nepalese brands, like the Hindu, Burmese. I took a strand of and it's some really gnarly Hindu Kush that I got from a friend that was in Iraq. He did some traveling, hiking. Obviously, he's one of our guys. Anyway, he kind of brought back about 5 or 6 seeds of just some stuff that just blow your mind. It was in my basement, but it was just huge. We had to tying it down and tying it down. So
Yeah.
I'm going to hit this with some Burmese. I got to, and this is just an Asian variety that bring it, shrink it down.
Right.
So,
Make it more palatable for indoor growing, or suitable for different types of conditions and stuff. Uh,
yeah,
and then further to that, I mean, like, obviously, the therapeutic benefits of cannabis, are obviously, one of the most amazing things in the world. I mean, we're coming back to plant-based medicines, which is fantastic. But have you focused any on, cannabinoid isolation or like anything like in terms of like, how do we target, genetics to be, good for the medical side of things, let's
well,
say?
more medicinal. Yeah. Well, those are the isotopes that we look for. Some people call those characteristics. But when we're dealing with strains, a lot of people say it's a strand instead of a strain. Well, a strand is a cutting of rope, but a strain is a lab quality virus or species of something that exists. And so it's a strain. And so we creating phenotypes from these strains. There's something called viscosity of the plant. It gets really viscous, really sticky.
Mhm.
Those are a visual presence of cannabinoids, things that are gonna, help trigger an entourage effect or a slide into a open mind of
Mhm.
reception. Because when we smoke cannabis, people call it being stoned or high, but what it means is you're sliding into a receptive state, a hypnotic state where you're bringing stuff in. That's what medicinally it does for you, and it helps you relieve tension, the mind, helps you achieve REM sleep. And so the stickier the plant, just for a visual, the more profound the smell. Those are just characteristics of terpenes, certain values of THCA, the precursor to THC. Once it's lit, boom,
Right.
it's into the mind.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. I mean, it's really important to have even baseline education for cultivators,
Oh,
or just new startup businesses that are trying to get into this, right? And I think that education is really critical to understand. And there's different questions like the license application asks for. I've seen this in multiple states. Like for instance, like one of those questions is like, how would you provide an uninterrupted supply of cannabis? to medical patients or even just to the population. What do you think about that? What do you think is the most important thing to accomplish that? I mean, in my opinion, it would be like obviously perpetual harvesting, making sure you have scalability. But what is your opinion on that?
Well, it's always going to be workflow. It's going to be space, achievable space to where you have 3 times the amount of ready material to go in as you do flowering. Because if you're limited to a 5,000 square foot canopy, which isn't a mistake by Chicago, but it does limit the constituents that can get into it. And that's why they have social equity. Mm-hmm. But at 5,000, that means you're going to have a rack room of about 10,000 plants ready to go in, with another 5,000 already being cut that week. Because what you want to do is be able to say, okay, well, we have 1,000 plants going in on one Friday, another 1,000 going out, and another 1,000, and you're overlapping over the period of a month, 4,000, with a variable of another 5 once they allow you to extend, because you're going to do 1,000, or you can do up to 15 to where you achieve your 5,000 square foot quota. But vertically speaking, when they expand, that's when you start bringing your implementation or vertical integration of vertical rack systems.
Right.
You start kind of reclaiming some of that floor space back to go cubicle, and you start smashing the game when you're growing short.
Absolutely. If a local ordinance or a state regulatory structure doesn't, allow you, because there's some places where it's like leaf to leaf, right? You can only measure it. That's your canopy space. So you can't
lineal feet,
Yeah. But I mean, obviously maximizing that square space with the technology we have nowadays, right? I mean, 9 years ago when LEDs first came out, it was a whole other but
making a lot of oil.
Yeah. So I think that that's really helped that approach. Plus, AI and of course IoT and sensors and things like that. So depending on how far you want to go with it, but from a startup perspective, I do think that's a very important aspect to that. And of course, other things that are important are, the environmental factors, right? So, I mean, what do you think are the best environmental factors in terms of things like, just the general, aspects like, temperature, pH, or what type of nutrient system, or maybe they want to use a dosatron, or, what's your best methodology?
Well, I mean, for the first company, if you're going to start, it should always be, either a flood tables, where you set up a rack table, 8x4s, or you come in and have custom plastic welders put together a custom system for you, to where you have maybe 100-foot run and then another intermediate of 100-foot run, so you can be able to get in and get your spacing. But you got to remember, it's craft grow, so all of your propagation, your watering techniques, these are going to be on a smaller scale, but still scalable in a vertical fashion, to where your nutrients, you could have a pre-mixed line, which is to me okay, but then you can have a basic line to where you have all the different feeding mixtures into one whole, to where you're using a dosatron, and then some people are using a pH reader, to where it's constantly giving you updates, because you have the interface on the wall that's controlling your flip boxes, your fans, your humidity, your ventilation, your water, and you train your operations manager and your supervisors to keep an eye on that, indicators of, when they might have trouble, when there might be a sensory issue, or, temperature range should stay in the 70 to 75, no more than 78, in the plant canopy, because, you're going to keep your plants a little warmer, because sometimes you're not using HID, high intensity gavitas, dual ceramic hot metal highlights, they run a little hot, but you get a strong nug, you get a strong profile on your analysis, you get a really good comeback on your return on investment. But can you imagine the whole city of Chicago burning gavitas? Lights out every night.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I just want to, just point out to the audience that anytime there's a chat box down there that you can ask questions to these folks. These are experts at the at the top of the game. I've been in the industry for 25 years. You've been in the industry for 30 years. Fantastic knowledge. Because again, we are looking at smaller grows here, not like full scale industrial size grows, which have a whole different type of mechanics to it. Whereas this is more like almost boutique. It reminds me a lot of early Prop 215 in California. And I think that, this model allows more varieties to be able to be produced in a boutique fashion. I think it's going to increase quality. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I do believe so because I've heard the rumors, and that's the reason we kind of came into Chicago. Corey and I, we kind of looked at each other like, we're in Vegas at a tobacco, speaking event, and the professional expo. Corey had to, present, and I presented. We walked around and met folks, and we decided, we're going to Chicago because we heard there were enough rumors that there was bad quality,
Right.
much of a need of having good resources, and they got a shortage. Corey was like, yeah, it's no brainer. So we started going up. We talked to Roz about teaching a class, and we're gonna hope that by the culture of us coming in, a small wave can create a tsunami. Because what we're gonna do, we're gonna plan on bringing in really strong genetical strands that we've bred and have been staples over the years. We're gonna follow strict SOP. We're gonna do whole plant harvesting, to where you're not chopping the plant up, leaving chloroform in the plant, just hanging it up in 10 days. Oh, we got a product. No, we're going to put in cedar lined rooms. We're going to make sure that those are already humidically controlled, the lighting, the hanging, to where it's almost like aging a wine. It's boutique style, to where we're running cookies. What you smell is exactly what you're going to taste. We're even going to have terpene boxes in some of our dispensary partners, where when we're extracting some of this stuff, they can say, what does it smell like? Bam, you don't need the weed. Here you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting great nowadays, man. I mean, because again, you've been in this for for a longer time.
I know how to beat the big
guy.
guy.
It's like every week something changes, technology advances, our knowledge and brain trust advances as a group, as a collective. We're all activists at heart. We've all been here moving this forward, and here we are for full circle almost. For me, it's like we helped open up the first dispensary in the state of Illinois,
wow.
in 2014. So we're coming back. It's like wow, so that's fantastic, man. I really appreciate all you guys have done. And, I kind of want to move on to some questions with Corey about, how do we brand this, man? I mean, there's breeding and branding, there's genetics. I mean, they're all over the place. How do you protect it? And then from that point, like obviously a business, from the proof of concept all the way to successful operations and exit. What do you think about some of that stuff in terms of how it's going to apply to specific exhibits in this application? So for specifically Exhibit E, they actually talk about packaging and labeling. So what are your thoughts on proper or compliant packaging and labeling?
I mean, thankfully, Illinois is pretty easy with this one. Their requirements aren't so stringent as, go to Colorado or California and you've just got pages you need to deal with. Nevada is ridiculous what they require you to show. Illinois, however, it's pretty basic. So you keep these, couple of talking points that have to be on there. You guys have laid it out really well in the Accelerator, I think, and having just, all that's just, it's very at your fingertips. The bigger aspect goes beyond the application, and when you start moving into how do we differentiate when we're on the store shelves, and because there's just a sea of people that are coming out with new product all the time, and it's really easy to get caught up in the mix. And so I think a lot of that is creative packaging. What's going to stand out is something that maybe looks a little bit different from everybody else's. Maybe that has to do with the shape of the box or the package that it's in. Maybe it has to do with the coloring. Maybe it just has to do with your brand overall. And does it give some sort of emotional response when you look at it? Do you have a social purpose that goes behind it that's able to draw people in additionally, So there's a lot of avenues that go along with that. And it's the same way, like, why do you buy one beer versus another when you see it in the store? Why is one cereal box make people resonate towards it, whereas the other ones are a lot more blah, And it's just creating something. Can you touch someone's childhood from this? Is this addressing a need right now that really is poignant to them? Are you tapping into the social zeitgeist? It's, there's a lot of avenues that go along with that and creating a solid brand.
Right. And that's an awesome, quick general overview of that, but getting a little bit more specific, like, for instance, like an Exhibit F in the application talks about a business plan. You have your construction timetable, you have your things that you have to do. From a marketing perspective, where do you think that starts in that construction time plan?
I don't think that you can start too early, when it comes down to the marketing plan, the thing about it is, it's going to change. It's an organic document that's going to continue to evolve over time. And so the sooner you can start laying down the framework of that and figure out who you are as a company, what's my identity, what's my brand, what's the brand voice, and what direction do we plan on going, who's our target demographic, because you're going to pitch very differently to baby boomers or to Gen X than you are to millennials or Gen Z. It's a very different product type, and you're probably touching it from maybe one's a little bit more on the we're fun, playful lifestyle brand versus, no, this is extremely medicinal. This is there for your aches and pains. This is there for your PTSD, your anxiety. Like there's a lot of different touch points when it comes down to that. And I think to address all of those, and when you're taking into not just packaging and such, or the brand identity, but you got the website experience to deal with. Your SEO needs to start out early, because there could be another store that's right down the block from you if you got a dispensary, and there's another one that's a block away. What's going to differentiate why you went to one and why you went to the other? Well, it's generally speaking, that's your Google My Business presence. And do you show up in the top 3 on Google Maps? Because if you don't, you're missing out on 92% of the business, right? Only 8% of the people fight for those ones that are beneath the 3-pack. If you're not in those top 3, well, you're already fighting from behind, I mean,
there's already brands that are just paying to have shelf space, right? That's a whole thing that's happening now, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why when you go to Target or your grocery store or whatnot, there are some products that are eye level, and there are other ones that are down at the bottom. You got some that are on end caps, and the things that are on end caps or eye level are going to sell better than the ones that are traditionally at your feet. And so it's, there's a lot of different avenues that you need to attack when it comes down to finding your correct space within the dispensary, finding your brand on the internet, making sure that your website and your landing pages look solid, making sure that your SEO actually brings those pages to life and allows people an opportunity to see them, because if you're not on the first page of Google, you lost.
Hey, I can 100% agree with that. I'm a pretty good expert at SEO. When I started my company, in 2011, we were the first Green Rush out there, right? Green Rush Consulting. But doing the SEO allowed me to get that placement on Google. And so usually for specific key terms, you can type it in right now, open a dispensary in New York, and you'll find us like at the top of the page. Even sometimes above the actual regulatory agency.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all free. It's not free, but it's like, pretty much free. I mean,
if you've got an in-house SEO guy, but for someone that's just coming from, and this is something that, it's part of the reason why I got into this business to begin with, was if you're a 3rd generation grower and you can make, you can grow the best colas all day long, your yield is ridiculous. You've been doing this for years and years and years. And now someone says, well, all right, but now we need you to take it from the duffel bags and the pickup trucks, put it into a dispensary. It's got to be compliant, and people have to be able to identify you from the shelf.
Oh, man. But that's where you guys come in, right?
Well, that's 100% it. Yeah.
Right? That's fantastic. I mean, like, it's just so funny because I know we can reminisce on a lot of these different, experiences that we've all had. Coming back to SEO, I'm a firm believer in Google search results, making sure you're in that space, but there's like this other overall package on top of that, that's like social media influencers and maybe just having product placement in certain ads, or, tell me a little bit about that, about how your services or how you see cannabis businesses now and in the future being able to, take advantage of that, because they can't use Facebook ads, right? Because Facebook,
totally. Yeah.
So what do you think?
Yeah, well, so I kind of equate it to liquor sales in some regards. What you can do for liquor, what you can do for cigarettes is basically what you can do for cannabis. And so you have to treat it as though you're not selling the cannabis itself necessarily a lot of times, because you can't talk about, like, well, this strain's the best and we got sales on it and come on down to our shop and all that jazz. But you create a lifestyle presence through your social media pages that kind of emotes who you are as a brand. So if the brand was a person, what does that person do? Do they hang out on the beach and they kick it with their friends and stuff? Or is this person someone who's like, no, I want to be able to focus on my work, and I'm very business driven and oriented. I'm an entrepreneur. And so these are the things that I do. Is it very family oriented? Is it something do you deal more with the health aspects of it? And so it's more about fitness based, or it's more about staying medically fit, whether that be mental health or physical health, and it's kind of, you have to treat it in that manner. And some people go immediately to influencers and stuff, which is fine, but I don't think that's necessarily going to get you to where you want to go.
Right.
It's about starting it early on your own, and making sure that there's consistency in this and continuing to get your brand message out there constantly.
Right.
Because this is a race that it's the Indy 500, right? As soon as you take your foot off the gas pedal, then you lost. You know, you're back to back. So you got to constantly put that gas on. Yeah.
Right. You got to constantly be passionate. You got to be constantly innovative. But, you know, I mean, I think that's really important testament that, you know, exactly what you said. There's got to be a great story. There's always a great story around, you know, a great brand. And I think that, you know, I mean, you started to kind of do that a little bit. You just started to answer the question of how do you advise applicants that are just starting to tell their story, right? I mean, we get a lot of stories that are like, you know, maybe, you know, they had, a relative that, you know, was helped with therapeutic benefits of cannabis. You know, I've heard that one a lot. Or I've heard a lot of like, oh, I believe this, they just believe in something in terms of how they move forward with it. And you see a lot more motivation, dedication, they're more driven to get it out there. And that's kind of all of us, you know, we were all in that same stage. So, you know, how do you guys, you know, TC Solutions, go through that process? It's just like an intake process and you just kind of like,
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we've got a whole intake form that kind of asks people to kind of identify their brand in some regards. And I think as a brand, you need to look at yourself and say, what are the reasons why I got into this? There's a company that we're working with, to give you an example right now. It's a CBD brand out of New Mexico. And it's a husband and wife couple that decided they wanted to get into this because they suffered from Lyme disease. And this Lyme disease was so debilitating to them. They started getting a lot of different pharmaceutical treatments, and it literally would knock them out. They were like, I felt like a zombie. You know, we weren't able to really function very well in our daily life, but this is what was required of us in order to curb this Lyme disease that was plaguing us. And well, then they started dabbling with CBD. And as they did that, they found they were able to get solace. They were able to find respite of some resort. They were able to heal themselves naturally. And with something that was organic, that they were able to grow and make themselves, which was just a huge influence to their lives. And it's through that we are telling their brand story of, we're a simple brand, husband and wife couple. We created this thing because this is the pain that we went through. And we know that other people are going through this. And so we want to be able to help you curb your issues. Right. And it's similar, and it doesn't have to be that, but that there's an emotional connection that comes along with that to someone else who has suffered from those same problems, right? And so, I mean, and I don't know how many people are affected by Lyme disease on a daily basis or, you know, annually in the United States, but I have to imagine the number is significant, you know, and it's the same way with any other aspect of it. When you look at your brand, think about it as a person. What kind of person is that, right? Do you connect with that person? Yeah, give them a soul. And it should be, you should emote some kind of a connection, rather, your brand should have the ability to create an emotional connection with its constituents. So anyone that is a consumer to this brand, you want them to feel something from it. Now that feeling can be anger and frustration with the place that they're in currently. It can be joy because of what you're bringing them. It can be that it's just a fun brand. Maybe you're just there just for people to just lose track of what happened in the day, and they just want to relax and kick it and, you know, have fun. Maybe it's a party. I mean, like, it's all up to kind of what you want to bring out of it. But when you look at who your end person is, what do they emotionally connect with? And can you bring that emotional connection into your brand through packaging, through the copy, through your lifestyle aspects and what you're doing on social media, through the overall culture that the people who work there believe in? Because you can't have a party brand and then you go and you see their facilities and it looks like the gulag and there's people chained to the desk, right? It doesn't fit with the ethos, right?
Right. But it is not only externally to the world, but also internally through mission and values and
100%, yeah.
Just goals, right? I mean, like, and really like just trying to move it back up to the top of the supply chain and really looking at genetics in particular, and then talking about breeding and branding and, you know, how that happens. And I got to, you know, I've been waiting to ask this question between the two of you, but you know, tell me, do you come up with the names of the strains before or after executing the actual cross-pollination and stabilizing?
Well, usually it comes to the breeder, you know, like an inspiration. He's thinking about a couple plants and he starts writing a few things down, and all of a sudden, you know, like Shabinsky, he came up with gelato because he felt like the terpene type that he had resembled or kind of emulated gelato. So supposing somebody took Blue Dream, which was more of like Blue Dream was a haze cross with a Blue Dream.
I remember that early Blue Dream. That was nice when it first
Man,
came out.
it was. Yeah, it was a really good one. But they took the blueberry and crossed it with, I think it was Dreamliner, one of these strands that they were running with haze in it, and then I think it was Neville's haze, really strong sativa type plant.
Nice,
Huge.
nice. Yeah, that's really interesting because again, when we're looking at eminent federal legalization. We're looking at everyone, just like you said, it's kind of like a race where everybody's trying to like claim their stake, et cetera, however you want to look at it. But we're looking at the supply chain. I always felt that genetics and breeding, were always the space, for really just the innovation, right? And then you get to the points of, have people doing just mass scale grows and just growing straight flower. You have people doing flash frozen and just turning it into extractions and, for all the other various derivatives and products, and then it splits medical and adult use, lifestyle, medical, right? And so I think that medically, since we haven't identified fully all of the compounds or ways or any of that, gone through clinical trials or anything like that, I mean, do you feel like, or even this is a question even between the two of you, do you feel like which one's the longer path or the more sustainable path, and which one's the shorter? I always felt like adult use is just really, this is a quick, thing. It's going to happen. This is happening already. But when we look at things like the medical side of this, and also how it bridges into hemp, which is something that you guys do too as well. And then we bridge out into textiles and all kinds of other aspects. I mean, this is just a completely resourceful plant. And I was just wondering from you guys' experience, like, where do you think where do you think the longest path is? Or where do you think that's going to head to?
Well, I'll tell you where the medical path is. It's definitely the long path because that's the path of discovery. People are gonna discover. They're gonna keep learning about terpenes and the different uses of cannabis. They're gonna still have different types of vitro sciences. I still believe that there's still reclamation projects for consolidating the plant. I mean, a lot of people may not want to talk about genetically altering, but there's certain parts of the plant that I think that we'll need for human sustainability at some point. So it will evolve itself, but that's going to be through the laboratory sciences, and that'll take, maybe another 100, 200 years, and they'll have a lot of antibiotics and stuff that come from that. I mean, Corey's got a piece that,
I was going to say, if you take a look at even when you think about cannabis, for the longest, it was always just THC, 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 THC. And then all of a sudden CBD comes into it as a thing. And it's, oh shit, all right, we could do this instead. Now CBD. And then now the big buzz at the last conference we went to is people talking about CBG and that being the big aspect. And they're not even discussing CBN yet. And we're barely just getting into THCA. And so there's a lot of different aspects of this that that are going to continue to come out. The more people are able to research it, and where it was so restricted for so long, with it opening up now, I think the medicinal end, like Jamal was saying there, is going to open up over the next, it'll be hundreds of years that people will be studying the same plant and coming up with new different ways to deal with it, especially as big pharma starts getting more into it and digging their hands in because it's coming, right?
Yeah, Israel, probably one of the leading, medical scientific, consortiums around the world, is doing a lot of these studies. So it's really interesting to see. And, I just want to see what you guys take on it, from where you guys are at, in your perception, because it's always great to collaborate and see exactly where that's heading, man. I think it's an important question for your business, right? Because if you're going in one direction, you're going to stay in that direction. It's got limitations. Same way the other way, but it's a longer path.
Yeah.
And I think back to a branding, IP, marketing perspective, whether it's genetics or a formulation or, or some kind of methodology, that is, like a nice key secret sauce for folks to really kind of experiment in, because it's all about experimentation. It's all about discovery. And I really appreciate that answer. It's really awesome.
Oh yeah, completely.
So there's a couple other things too, as well. I'd like to kind of get into maybe some more financial aspects, like, from your experience on operating grows or managing, these types of facilities, and specifically going from, extraction, doing extraction facilities too, because, they're allowing that, they're under craft grow to a certain extent. And then when you get your infusers, they just take, you know, the distillate and really kind of put it into its different variations of products. So, you know, I was kind of wondering, you know, what are like the startup costs or capital costs that you guys have experienced for what Illinois is offering? So it's just 5,000 square feet for the grow, obviously, you know, that can incrementally probably increase up to 15,000 square feet over time. What are your thoughts on that?
Corey, do you want to go with that one first, or do you want me to?
No, go for it, buddy.
Well, you know, when we're talking craft grows, we're talking boutique style. That means it's going to be smaller, concentrative efforts, you know. So that means you try to stay within under $1 million in investment. You know, you try to stay along the lines of, you know, you might spend 150 towards your grow for your initial, you know, then you might spend about another 150 towards your extraction. Then again, you might spend another 100 towards security, lighting, backup, battery backup. You still might want to show some sort of incentive towards solar usage. I mean, you have certain things, you have nutrient value, but then you still have payroll to take care of. So you at least want to, you know, 250,000 for that. So you can keep that in, and then with your investment partners, be able to roll back some of the investment for equity, you know, and then be able to recoup some of that cost after you start growing and start paying towards the ROI with one of your first crops, you know, which is about 120 days. But if you're growing about, you know, let's say 1,500 plants and you're extracting, everybody knows that you can, if you're doing a dispensary as well, which is advantageous for the dispensary model, you know, if you're going to be a craft grow, I think that extraction part would be significant, because that composes of at least 80% of sales from what I've seen statistically for cannabis lately.
Right. Yeah, we all know it's all closing in when it comes to pricing and commoditization. I mean, that's just happening, and that's, you know, why I'm putting with you guys' experience, I'm putting a big emphasis on you know, the discovery of breeding of new genetics so you can differentiate yourself in the marketplace, which then, you know, feeds into, you know, your marketing services that you guys offering, you know, in terms of that. So, and then speaking of marketing, like, what do you think the marketing budget is within that $1 million for, let's just say, a craft grow, Corey?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. So to me, I always look at it like, this is America. And if you want to buy a pencil that costs 10 cents or 25 cents, you can do that, because we get them in bulk and they're cheap, and you can pick that up. If you want to buy a $10,000 pencil, though, I could sell you one. We could find one that you want to, you know, all that. It's your marketing budget kind of fits along that.
Does it write $10,000 checks every single time?
You know, it's whatever it is that you want to spend your. I mean, you get what you pay for in a lot of regards, right?
Oh, 100%.
So you can start this entire thing off of Fiverr and do it for your $30 logo and your, you know, $200 website and whatever, and get up and moving. And that's totally rational when it comes down to, you know, you've got a limited budget and you need to put it into the grow instead. I would say you want to keep, I mean, 10% of your budget set aside for marketing costs, because marketing is what drives the sales. You could have the best product in the world. You could have the dopest ganj that you've been working on for 40 years. It doesn't make a difference if people don't know that it exists.
Exactly.
If you take it into the hands of the consumer, then it's just sitting there. And no matter how much money you put into this amazing grow facility, you know, if you're not generating revenue, then it's going to fold.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to fold. They're going to be sitting there on all this weed. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, and this is one of the biggest you know, this is one of the bigger challenges too, you know, especially in California, you know, where, you know, there is a lot of, you know, black market diversion from that. And because they just don't have either the professional skill, or, you know, they don't have the capitalization requirements to be able to do that. And so that's where you're seeing a lot of these stories that are happening, you know, obviously, you know, the regulatory environment here, you know, Prop 215 was just a really open market. It was already established market, right? Whereas when we go to a new market like Illinois, it's easier to really streamline the process from a regulatory perspective, from, you know, a compliance perspective, you know, to a certain degree. But California's got a whole nother animal.
Oh yeah.
You know, I don't know if you guys operate here or not, but I think it's pretty intense. You know, so when it comes down to it, I think that, and that's some pretty awesome stuff. Do we have any questions from the audience? If you guys want to ask any questions, till we move into this next, you know, set of questions for these guys. If there's anybody out there that wants to, please do. You know, I actually wanted to just really kind of step real quick into Infuser, you know, and talk about, you know, a little bit about the extraction processes. volatile or non-volatile extraction processes, and kind of what are the differences between solvent and solventless extraction, and what do you guys think are some of the setbacks and drawbacks each?
Well, when you start talking about extraction versus different types of infusion and versus different volatile and non-volatile gas, let's cover volatile and non-volatile first. We'll talk about like CO2 extraction, you know. Mm-hmm. CO2 extraction is a good example of a non-volatile gas to where you can actually collect those terpenes that we talked about. You know, we talked about the different smells because people are starting to clone terpenes. So when you're dealing with CO2 extraction, it's just a closed loop system, excuse me, and you're using a reoccurring gas, which is CO2, to pressurize a valve to push those extracts down through that tube into that dip tray, you know, to where when you pull it out, it's full of your extract. Now, you're dealing with butane extraction, you know, which is a good example that we started off with in the early days of, you know, the collectives. We were running butane gas in a closed loop, but it was combustible. But the difference was that this gas was cold, but it would hit the floor. And then if it hit the floor, it would give you the feeling that the gas was away. But once the floor area heated, the gas would rise and you could have an explosion.
Oh no.
Yeah, and that was the danger with the butane. And so we started using solventless extraction methods, which is like using screens, micron, very small, where you're doing different types of bubble hash.
Yeah.
I mean, some people like to do that. I mean, I'm a very big fan of bubble hash. I love bubble hash. It's a product that doesn't really spoil as long as you keep it in a hydrated or like a humidor type box, you know? I mean, it's very, very good for cooking, and you can even extract with butane hash.
Right.
I've had friends of mine take bubble hash and extract it, you know, and you'd get some of the most amazing runs out of it, you know. And so there's different ways, but when you start infusing, I'm a big fan of using canola oil, you know, the old school olive oil, you know, using peanut oil. Some guys use butter. You know, it just depends on exactly if you're going to use it for cooking or, you know, what you're trying to extract on. You know, I've even seen people use naphtha for Rick Simpson oil. You know, be able to use the naphtha to boil off the crude. You know? So I've seen people do a lot of different types of extractions, but it just comes down the line of, you know, the comfortability that you have when you're trying to achieve a certain method, you know.
Right. Also, you know, you always want to hire experienced experts too, like yourselves, right? I mean, why even? I mean, you're a business. You know, if you're trying to take any chances, hire the experts, learn later. I mean, you probably don't even have time to learn later, but be a visionary on finding the products that you want to produce. And I've always found that working with lots of clients all across the U.S. and all across the world, that they have a hard time understanding that, and then really trying to bring them back down to, okay, what kind of products do you want to produce, and then working your way up from there to understand what that process is to create it. Is that the methodology that you guys use too as well, and is that helpful?
I mean, I would say, yeah. Definitely. I mean, you want to know, you have a game plan for exactly what it is you're looking to create and such, and then a person or even a group of people can only know so much about so many things. Bring in the experts, bring in people that are able to help teach, educate your staff, so that way you can do it moving forward. But you're dealing with something that has the cost of a precious metal. So maybe, you know, put down the time and the energy to, or for that matter, put aside the budget to be able to get it done right the first time. So that way you don't end up leaving yourself with, you know, going experimental on something that costs, you know, $100 a pound. You know?
I know we've all seen that one. To see people make that same mistake, and I hear you. You know, it's like, because again, when people get in this, they get really excited, and that's great. You know, but they start like picking all these different things. It's like every grower says I'm the best grower, or like, you know, and it really gets very difficult. So we've just been fortunate enough to understand that, how to distill that process down to an MVP, right?
Yeah.
And MVP leads into understanding how to create it and then scaling from there. And I think that's probably some really important advice. You know, the tech industry uses that same type of advice, going through sprints and doing things like that. So I've obviously, that's definitely the path. I know there was a question that you want to come back to, Corey, real quick, which is about strain naming, and I would love to hear what you had to say about that.
Yeah, so it's funny because Jamal, being somebody who is more of a grower than anything else, he does magic that I can't comprehend. But when it comes down to bringing it out to the masses, I think that a lot of times the growers look at it in a very specific kind of sense in that, all right, I had this strain and I had this strain and we're putting them together. And so therefore it's this thing now, because it identifies to them exactly where it came from, because these guys are scientists, right? Whereas to me, from a marketing perspective, I look at it from, there's a company that I worked with here in LA that they're a seed company, and they got some fantastic strains. But they had recently mixed a do-si-do with Purple Punch, and they call it Do-si Punch.
Of course it is.
Yeah, because that's where their heads line up. Oh, okay, these are the two things I'm
pretty easy, huh? Smoke a joint, Do-si Punch. Yeah, that's what it is.
Now, there's another company, comes out of, I want to say these guys are out of Colorado. They had literally the same strains, right? And they put it together, but instead of calling it Do-si Punch, they called it Slurricane.
Oh, wow.
Guess which one sold more seeds?
Yeah. So which one do you think has more branding power? Do-si Punch?
I mean, that's it, right?
Or do you think Slurricane's just for the East Coast?
Yeah. It's and that's the whole thing is that, so I mean, a lot of it comes down to, all right, what are the phenoms like, what kind of smells are you getting from it and stuff. Maybe you want to base it off of that. Maybe you want to base it off of what end result you're getting here and what the effect has. Like, oh, this is really sort of a body feeling, or this one knocks you out dead, so I'm going to call it zombie, or whatever. Like, you create something that maybe that has something going on out there. Maybe that has something to do with the end result in that regard. Maybe it's just a fun play on words, but at the end of it, you want something that's going to stand out. It's going to be original. It doesn't sound like what everyone else has been doing, right? Create something that's special to whatever it is this strain has, because these are your babies, right? If you love it and you put all this time and energy and care into it on the front end and creating this magical plant, put the same amount of time and energy and care into naming that thing and putting it out to the masses.
Well, because speaking of putting it out to the masses, I mean, I know there's this question from the audience right now, and specifically in the Illinois market, right? So, again, I know that like creating an amazing strain like that with an incredible story behind it, and then leading it into, okay, we know we can command a higher price because it has this much THCV in it for PTSD for veterans, or, it's a really, amazing strain that, we can label and brand. So like price per pound, like, what do you think the price per pound is going to look like in the Illinois market, or the COGS to create that? Do you have any thoughts around that?
I'll go to Jamal on that one. He's a
Oh, well, basically when it comes down to price per pound, if it's going to be a boutique style, everyone knows it's higher than just your average adult type of weed. It has a certain type of criteria that it has to follow along. But, I wouldn't be shy of charging someone $2,700, $2,800 for my type of work, but when it comes down to Seattle, I mean, I bred with Billy Kimber and OG, and we're still getting $3,200 a pound on craft grow. Now, whatever facility I'm working with, we would probably negotiate, the type of cannabis we're going to grow. It's got to be something aficionado, something that people are going to try to just basically light up as soon as they walk out. They want it now. I mean, like Burger King, like that. We want to be able to get it.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, I mean, quality, consistency, purity, potency, all of it's like, this to try to get the same effect, because, obviously anything will affect all of us differently.
Well, yeah.
But being able to maintain that consistency obviously would be really important, and of course, efficiency in operations, like, which was the second part of that question, like, cost of goods sold, like, so what is the average on that? Let's just say if we're selling at $3,200 a pound, what do you think the cost of goods sold is on that?
Well,
with like say in a fish, not fully automated, like that's, super, high tech, but like on an average operation, let's say.
So an average operation, what it cost you to start up an operation like that? I would say I'd be comfortable saying I would go into a market with no less than 850, no more than 1.5, and that's covering insurance, payment, the full gambit. because you want to be able to try to set up your grow to where you have the efficiency, you have your sustainability, you have your environmental together, you have all of your watering together, you know, whatever medium you're going to use, which needs to be recyclable, you know, because soil is going to be more cumbersome, bring in some pests. But then the quality of the plant, you want to be running like wedding cake. You want to be running gelatos, sherbets. You want to be running, you know, a strong OG, a sour diesel. You want to be running like a grape ape. You know, you want to be pulling down something that's going to have a lot of CBD in it, like Harlequin, some of the older stuff to where you're dealing with chocolate. Some of these strands that are going to emulate, you know, greatness, but then they're going to always come back for more to where, you know, you want to plan on having at least 10 cultivars in your grow to where you know it's grade AAA.
Right.
I think something as well when it comes down to the poundage and price per, the amount that you get taxed in Illinois when you're dealing with the THC percentages is significant based on how strong it is, right? You know, because the tax levels change. And so if you have something that's going to be stronger, then it's going to increase that price per pound. Whereas if you have some of the easier based stuff, I was talking to somebody the other day about creating more entry level THC amounts. Because if you look at what back in the 90s or whatnot, you know, the cannabis that people were smoking, you're talking about 8 to 10%, and now you're looking at in the 20s, you know, and so that's a significant difference in the amount that and the way that it affects you as a you know what you're smoking. And so I think it's kind of fun to play around with the different levels. Maybe you've got a light THC product that comes in a little bit cheaper and it's more for just standard recreational use. Whereas then you've got significantly more expensive products that are going to have that higher THC punch, but more bang out of the buck. Right.
Right. Absolutely. And, you know, it's so variations across the board. I mean, luckily we have historical data now. I mean, like when we all first started, we didn't have any of that really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, we were all pioneering how to create the historical data. You know, now we have companies out there doing big data on POS systems and different things like that. We have consumer insights. Like there's a lot of more information now to help these, you know, startups become even more successful than they were when we were first starting all this stuff. You know, so it's really fascinating. And, you know, I want to, you know, thank you guys for, you know, attending this webinar with us. I hope our audience, I don't know if our audience has any more questions, you know, now's the time to get them out. You know, and you guys are doing some great work. You know, it's fantastic. We'd love to, you know, collaborate with you guys anytime. I also want to explain to the audience that, you know, again, March 16th is the deadline for this application submission for Graph Grower, Infuser, and Transporter. You know, and the application accelerator products are all out right now, all live on our website. You know, please give us a call if you have any further questions about that. But we're really looking forward to supporting as many folks there, and, you know, in the state of Illinois to help them, you know, get a chance at, you know, creating their dream and vision in the cannabis marketplace. I mean, this is amazing. It's an amazing time to be alive, and I think that it's great to share with folks like you guys. Yeah, we dig it. Yeah, right there with you. Great, guys. So this concludes our webinar session. You know, like I said, we have this every Thursday at 1 p.m. Our next one is coming up, and thank you very much. Look forward to it. Have a great weekend.